of Money with Santosh Sirur.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Sound of Money. Well, as Sound of Money, we are coming after a couple of months, a little bit of a break in our episodes, but here we have with a fresh set of episodes, amazing guests once again lined up on The Sound of Money. And joining me today from Mumbai is Suhel Chander, who is basically a family financial expert and also a certified financial planner. And he's the co-founder of Handholding Financial. Hi, Suhel, and welcome to The Sound of Money.
Hi, Santosh. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me over here.
And
How are
also,
you?
yes, very good. And also, I must add for our listeners, Suhel is an ex-colleague of mine. We work together, and so it's much easier to chat with him on a whole lot of financial related issues as we go down to the Sound of Money. All great, Suhel, and welcome to the Sound of Money. As we all know, we're going to talk about retirement solutions. And when I say retirement solutions, it need not be only for those who are retired, recently, who have retired recently or retiring in recent next few months. But this is also for those who are young, who have just started a career and for whom retirement planning, which may be 40, 50, 60, 70 years down the line, but it's more important in that sense. And that's exactly what we're going to discuss in this first episode of The Sound of Money when it comes to retirement planning. So, Suhel, the first question probably for you is, what kind of basically planning when you talk of retirement planning should one be discussing, and what should be basically the number one goal when it comes to the priority list?
Uh, when we speak about, especially financial planning,
Yeah,
uh, we always say, that, see, as individuals, as especially, working class individuals, uh, we all go through certain, common financial goals
yeah,
during lifetime.
yeah,
So be it, so especially for married people, be it planning for their kids' higher education, that's an unavoidable goal. Or it could be probably, planning for their kids' marriage goal. Or it could be probably, buying a second home or their first home. So
hmm,
these are generally common financial goals which are always given the priority.
yeah,
However, in giving priority to these goals, what unfortunately happens, something, which uh, has become a trend over the last so many years, is that one of the most important financial goals, which we call as the retirement goal,
yeah,
that takes a backseat.
yeah. Nobody
Uh,
really thinks of it because everybody
no,
says salo baad hai types.
correct, and that herein lies the irony, because unlike just like we can put a timeline to a lot of these goals, like for the kids' higher education goal,
Yeah,
retirement is a goal that I strongly feel that it should be the number one on the priority list of all individuals,
hmm,
especially given the fact that in a country like India, there's no concept of social security,
yeah,
unlike the Western countries.
yeah,
Second, if we see the trend, previously, people could, afford to be a bit relaxed because the setup was more of a new joint family setup.
yeah.
And with time, gradually, people are moving to a nuclear family setup.
True.
That is one thing. Second thing, which I would like to highlight, is the fact that, there was a very interesting survey conducted 2, 3 years back by a well-known research group. And the findings were very surprising. I'll just
Hmm.
share with you.
Yeah,
So, a staggering more than 51% of the Indians, as per the survey findings, it said that staggering more than 51% of the Indians did not actually plan for their retirement. And even
wow.
more ironical was that 1 in 5 Indians actually did not factor in inflation.
Hmm.
So, we also need to see one this in a context that, today, for example, if I were to take my own self, if I
Yeah,
wish to, apply for a home loan, or let's say I want to, uh, send my kid abroad for higher education to the best universities. Or if I wanted to take a personal loan, I can approach any of the financial institutions.
hmm.
And if I meet all the eligibility criteria, the chances of me getting a loan is good.
Yeah,
Like for all the, I say me, I'm talking about most of the working class individuals. However, when it comes to retirement, there's not any we are not going to come across a scenario wherein a financial institution is going to give a loan for retirement.
Yeah, that's the last thing one should expect.
That's the last thing.
There's no money as such, as flows in.
Correct. Which is why, we always say that please do give importance to, the other goals, but don't put this important goal on the back burner, because this is also a very important, event in our lives, which we can actually predict when we are going to retire, and we have a chance to plan it.
Yeah, much ahead in life.
Much ahead. Yeah.
So that brings me to the second question, Suhel. So youngsters who basically are at the very nascent stage of a career, should they start planning their retirement at that age, or is it somewhere around the mid-30s or the 40s they can start thinking about it? The dichotomy is you've just had your education completed, you just got a new job, and everyone wants to start off spending, because that's what you've been waiting for, but at the same time, equally important is savings. So how would you give a solution to an issue like this?
No, absolutely, Santosh. Like you very rightly said. So, especially people who are just starting out, and they're very keen with the first salaries coming in, and the independence that they enjoy of spending their own money. But what I've also realized is that in today's times, a lot of younger generation, they have become more aware of the fact that they also need to start planning early for XYZ goals. Now it is clear that we try and bring the importance of planning for the retirement also at the forefront, because it does make a huge amount of difference. The longer the time that an individual gives for this investment to do wonders for growing a retirement portfolio, it really works, because the compounding actually starts to kicking in the long run.
That's an interesting thought.
To give you a very simple thought, even let's say somebody starts with a 10,000 investment on a monthly basis over a 5-year, and if he just says I'm going to invest for a 5-year period, he might just accumulate 8.25 lakhs at a 12% return. But if he slightly increases the investment horizon to 15 years, the same, what I'm trying to do is he will realize that because of the compounding benefit, he will accumulate close to 50 lakhs in a 15-year period with the same. And if he continues investing for the 25-year period, he would accumulate close to 2 crores, to be specific, 1.9 crores. So this is what compounding does. No wonder, it's actually called as the 8th wonder of the world. So people who actually stay invested for long term, they understand that compounding really is beneficial in the long run. And which is why, coming to your question, it makes sense to start early.
But what about everything has its own advantages and disadvantages. So what kind of threats are there? Any big threats when it comes to retirement planning?
I would say the biggest threat to retirement planning is we call this a monster called as inflation. This is something like I mentioned earlier at the start of a conversation, hardly 1 on 5 individuals actually even think about inflation. So let me give you a very simple example. Let us say, my monthly expense today is 1 lakh. And if I'm 40 years of age, and if hypothetically, if I decide to stop working tomorrow and, I say I would want to retire and, enjoy a peaceful life, in today's time, I would just need a corpus of 2 crores. And, it can sustain. And I can get my requirement of 1 lakh, and the portfolio will also grow, and it will give me a tax efficient return. But that's not the real scenario. The real picture is actually I'm going to, in India, typically the retirement age is considered as 60. Of course, it depends on the individual that, if there are many individuals who prefer to work longer. So, but let us, assume that the retirement age is 60. So people or, investors, they need to understand that, the 1 lakh of monthly expense will actually balloon up to 4 lakhs after 20 years. And they need to be prepared to plan in such a way that they have a corpus of 8 crores and not just 2 crores.
To account for that 4 lakhs expenditure 20 years down the line, right?
Absolutely. So this according to me is one of the biggest threats to retirement planning, which every, working class individual needs to factor in.
Okay. So what are the options, or I would say the avenues for one to invest for achieving these goals, retirement goals? And when I talk about, or rather say retirement goals, it typically is a corpus. It's a huge lump sum amount, right? Which he or she can use when he has no income flows coming in anymore.
Correct. Correct. So, the options are plenty in the market. To name a few, you know, there are fixed income options like you have a PPF, you have, post office monthly income scheme, you have, fixed deposits, which a lot of investors still prefer. And then you have an asset class like equity, which we say the
Yeah.
mutual funds or, be
Hmm.
it stocks.
Yeah.
So these are, some of the well-known options which an investor can use
Hmm.
to accumulate the adequate amount of retirement corpus that he or she would require by the
Okay.
time he or she retires.
Okay.
Now, each has its own set of advantages. Uh, to elaborate, as we know, in India, most of the Indians typically believe in investing into the fixed income instruments,
Hmm.
which gives them an assured return, like, fixed deposit gives or a PPF gives.
Yeah.
Uh, at the same time, individuals also need to understand the fact that, or rather, I would say, they need to make a choice whether, they would want to have a portfolio which is going to give them stable returns, but which would be low in the range
Yeah.
and not
But
exorbitant.
consistent. Yeah.
Yeah. Or they would prefer to accumulate an adequate corpus by investing into an asset class like equity
Hmm.
through a mutual fund route or, stocks, where the the returns may not be constant. The returns will be volatile in the short term, but ultimately in the long run, it is this asset class which is going to, help the individual in accumulate the right amount of corpus that he or
Hmm.
she may require to accumulate by the time he or she retires.
So you say
So
that is where the power of compounding could help.
that is where the power of compounding works. And, we also need to understand there's something known as real rate of return. And
Hmm.
one also needs to factor in the taxation angle to it
Yeah.
and inflation. So there are multiple factors that an individual needs to factor in.
Hmm.
So, again, let me highlight this with a simple example. Uh, as is a well-known fact, everybody, prefers to invest into the most, well-known instrument backed by the government of India, which is the PPF.
Yeah.
Uh, the rate of interest, the advantage, it's a very good asset class because it falls under the EEE category. It's
Hmm.
exempt, exempt, exempt. However, what has been happening is that in the over the last, few years, the rate of interest has also been going down
Hmm.
substantially.
Hmm.
And, let us put things in perspective. For example, if a person has been investing uh, an amount of 70,000, which was the earlier maximum threshold limit
Hmm.
for availing the exemption limit
Hmm.
in the PPF, let's say, the person has been investing from 1996,
Hmm.
70,000.
Yeah.
And gradually the upper limit was increased to 1 lakh and to 1.5 lakhs, which is the present
Yeah.
limit.
Yeah.
So for the last 28 years, if somebody has been investing this amount on a regular basis, the investment amount would come to about 25.5 lakhs over the
Okay.
last 28 years time horizon.
Hmm.
Now, the investor would be, very happy that, he's getting an assured tax-free return of,
Yeah.
let's say, 8%,
Yeah.
which is now up to 7.1%. But in reality, after 28 years, this corpus of 25 lakhs has grown to 73 lakhs, which
Hmm.
is a sizable amount, no doubt,
Yeah.
and tax-free to it, which
Hmm.
is also a very plus point. But at the same time, the same individual has invested into a, let's say, a similar category, tax saving instrument like which we say an equity linked saving scheme category in mutual funds, which
Yeah.
also gives the taxation benefit. The same amount, let's do an apple to apple comparison. The same amount of 25.5 lakhs will grow to about 4.9 crores.
Wow. That's
So
awesome. Yeah.
that's the quantum of difference, uh, an investor will have to, make a decision that uh, that, whether they would like to be comfortably off or they would like to create significant wealth for themselves. Having said this, I would like to add one very important point that, like we said, we don't suggest to our investors to put all the eggs in one basket.
True.
They need to have a well-diversified portfolio. So
Yeah.
they will need to allocate at least some portion of the invisible surplus into this asset class also, so that they get the benefit of, long-term wealth compounding, and
Okay.
help them in having the right amount of, adequate retirement nest portfolio.
Okay. So, but what is about the, when we use the word corpus, which is like a big number, essentially to help one in the retirement life. And when it comes to retirement life, there could be, of course, the medical expenses and very unexpected expenditure and hardly income. So, how much corpus is really, at a bare minimum required to enjoy really a peaceful retired life? Or is there no such magic number?
No, when we are trying to plan or arrive at a bare minimum required corpus, we always need to factor in a couple of very important things that we try and check. We need to check with the investor what is his or her present monthly requirement.
Yeah, expenditure at home. Yeah,
expenditure at home, and we factor in inflation, which I've already mentioned, and we also try and understand after how many years the investor will actually retire. And when we put in all these factors together, we arrive at that required amount of the retirement nest corpus, which is sufficient for the investor to enjoy at least the same standard of living. If we consider a bare minimum 6 to 7% of inflation, which has been the historic rate of inflation in India.
Yeah.
Which is why I said that for any investor to understand, it's very simple. Like I was giving an example today, if my monthly expenditure is 50,000, and let's say I'm 40 years, actually when I decide to retire after 20 years, I will need to have a corpus of at least 4 crores. So that this 50,000 is factored in, after factoring the inflation, this 50,000 expenditure would actually become 2 lakhs of expenditure.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
So a retirement corpus of 4 crores would be sufficient if my present expenditure is
in present day situation.
In present day, if my expense is 50,000, then after 20 years when I retire, actually my expense would be 2 lakhs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for that, I would need a corpus of 4 crores then when I retire.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, we did speak about youngsters who are just starting their careers to invest, but there will be many guys who probably for whatever reasons, compulsions, family expectations, whatever, may have not been lucky enough to invest in mutual funds, or what have got the right advice in the first place to even invest in mutual funds. They could be late starters. It could be late 30s, mid 40s, even 50s probably, and who are a couple of years away from the retirement age. Can mutual funds help these individuals, and if so, then how?
Absolutely. Here's the beauty about this asset class, that SEBI, they have given plenty of options for the investor to make informed decisions. So they have come out with various categories, and they've laid it out in very simple terms. So it is here that our job as financial experts is there. We try our best to handle them during their investment journey, and we after understanding their risk appetite and the time period required for them to achieve that goal, to be specific, there are options like, even within the mutual fund space, there are different categories. So like you asked me that somebody who's just got probably 2 years left, or who has started late, so they have options of looking at category. It could be a hybrid category if somebody's got only 2 years left, and they don't want to take too much of they don't want to have too much of volatility in their returns. Then they could look at probably a as a space in the mutual fund, which is called as the hybrid mutual fund category. So which is a mix of equity and debt.
Yeah.
But if somebody, again over here, there are a lot of investors, who prefer to have a regular monthly income.
Yeah, that's a good option.
Just like, they get post-retirement, which is a basic requirement of, person who just stopped working. So even for them, deciding on the quantum of requirement that they need for them to sustain their monthly expenditure. There's an option of, wherein we say it's called a systematic withdrawal plan. Wherein, an investor can choose what is the quantum of percentage withdrawal rate that he needs to withdraw to sustain his monthly expenditure. And the wonderful part is, in spite of him meeting his withdrawal, requirements, the corpus also grows at the same time. Because, as we said, equity in the long run is an asset class which will, outperform all the other asset classes.
Absolutely.
So that's the benefit of investing. So to summarize, there are plenty of options. Investor can choose probably a pure debt fund option if it does not want any volatility. Even in debt space, they have different categories. So it is important for us to understand their requirements, and accordingly we suggest them. They can invest into a debt or a hybrid category. Likewise.
And what about those individuals who are senior citizens and who have just retired or about, already retired years back? Maybe when I talk of years, I say maybe say 2 or 3 years, who have some kind of a lump sum on hand because of the retirals that they have received from the company and want to go in for mutual fund. Is it a good time still to go in for it? And obviously they would look for some genuine hardcore safety option.
No, absolutely. It is a good time still to look at this asset class for the fact that, if we look at it from taxation, from a tax efficient perspective, or beating inflation and giving good inflation adjusted tax efficient returns, this is an asset class which they should definitely look at. I'm not saying that they should only look at this asset class. They need to diversify their portfolio. They need to have some, they can probably park some of their surplus into a scheme like a senior citizen savings scheme or a post office, monthly income scheme, which gives them an assured return of about 7.7 to 8% presently. Besides that, if they want a part of their portfolio to give, a higher returns, which would be more tax efficient, then they can opt for the systematic withdrawal plan by investing into a hybrid category funds.
Okay.
At the same time, if they are looking for an immediate, immediate income once they retire. Okay. However, there are some individuals who have retired just now and they feel that they might not need it immediately, but they may need it probably after 5 or 7 years. So if an investor has a horizon of 5 years, they can still look at, investing into a hybrid category or a large cap category, but to meet their, monthly requirements. However, if somebody is looking at purely growing their portfolio and not looking at any monthly withdrawals, then they can look at pure equity. So every individual's requirement will determine the kind of category of funds that he or should have in their portfolio. Besides also having senior citizen saving schemes or the post office deposits.
Okay. So so that's a good bouquet of investments across generations, right from somebody who is very early starter up to somebody midway there thinks that it's time to invest, or to a person who probably already has retired and still wants to go in for an investment option. Absolutely fantastic. So when it comes to NPS or the National Pension Scheme, how has the response been? Do you come across clients going in for this kind of an amazing investment instrument?
Absolutely. I mean, over the last few years, the response to this particular asset class has also been, very encouraging. And in terms of the performance of NPS has also, it's been generating decent to good returns in the long run. When I'm saying from a returns perspective, it's been, significantly beating a fixed income asset class like even PPF. And
Okay.
the good thing about is that it gives the investor the flexibility
Hmm.
to actually change the allocation from time to time.
Okay.
And that is also the flexibility gives it an added benefit
Hmm.
to have in it makes it a good asset class to have it in their overall portfolio. So I would definitely say one should also consider having an NPS a part of their
The
portfolio to
bouquet of
create
your
that
investments. Yeah.
category. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, that was the episode on retirement planning with Suhel Chander, who's basically a family's financial expert, and he's a certified financial planner and also the co-founder of Handholding Financials. Thank you so much, Suhel, for joining us on this episode of The Sound of Money.
Thank you, Santosh, for your time.
Well, and
Good day.
that with that, we come to the end of this episode of The Sound of Money. A lot more to come in coming weeks to months on The Sound of Money with me, Santosh. Till then, from me, Santosh Sirur, and my guest, Suhel Chander, thank you so much for joining on this program.
Sound of Money with Santosh Sirur.